This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Mac, Jack, and Jim This Week in Sports show.
Big football.
Good morning, guys. How are you? I'm sorry. It's just changed. It's no longer This Week in Sports. It's the Big Football Show, except we're going to do it
Big Football Show.
Yeah. This is that. But we're going to do it This Week in Sports to start off initially because there was something really big in sports that happened yesterday. And we got to lead off with Jack because he's going to be the guy who knows most about this. There was a heavyweight championship of the world. Before we get into football, since it's only still preseason, there was something, a big fight in Dubai. Jack, why don't you tell us a little bit about what went on yesterday?
Even though this is football Sunday, most football fans like boxing and they want to hear about a world heavyweight championship fight. A true world heavyweight championship fight that took place yesterday between Alexander Usyk and Anthony Joshua. Because Tyson Fury announced his retirement, the winner of yesterday's fight, which was Alexander Usyk, should be recognized as the world heavyweight champion. But of course, as soon as Usyk won, Fury told him to get his checkbook out, that he's coming back. But as far as I'm concerned, you announced your retirement. You're no longer champion. You no longer have a claim to the title. I mean, you could have a claim to a 50-50 purse if you want. You could have claimed you're the best heavyweight in the world, but you're no longer the champion. But in a way, it was a repeat of the first fight with Usyk winning a decision. This time it was a split decision, should have been unanimous. And it was the type of fight, you get the feeling that if they fought 10 times, maybe Joshua would win once. He'd find a way to win one time. And yesterday, Joshua was coming on in the second half. And in the ninth round, after falling behind, he had Usyk in trouble. He was battering him all over the ring for a little while. And it looked like he might get him out of there. But Usyk hung on, regrouped, came on strongly the next three rounds. He had Joshua in trouble in the 10th. Joshua showed a lot of heart himself, hanging in there. But sometimes you have a situation where one guy fights really well. He could leave with his head held high, and it's just that the other guy, just did better. No excuse. Usyk is just a little better, a little technically better, a little more skillful. They sometimes say the will can beat the skill. But when the will is equal for both guys, then the skill is the difference. And Usyk was just a little more skillful, doing things just a little bit better. And let me just say something about the judging very quickly. There were three judges, and if I were Joshua's camp, I would have protested beforehand and asked for three neutral judges, because one judge was from Ukraine. Mm-hmm. So the judge from Ukraine is never going to score against Usyk. With what's going on in Ukraine, him being a national hero. The other judge was from Joshua's country in the UK. But the judge from the UK, they've been known to be pretty honest, too. If they feel a fighter from another other country beat their guy, they're going to score for that guy. And the neutral judge was from the USA. A good judge normally from Mac's state of Connecticut, Glenn Feldman. Glenn Feldman incredibly scores the fight for Joshua, 115-113, 7 rounds to 5. Even Joshua's promoter thought Usyk won the fight. Eddie Hearn said so afterwards. The judge from England, the UK, he scores it for Usyk 7 rounds to 5. And the judge from Ukraine had it for Usyk 8 rounds to 4, 116-112, which was the way I had it. You can make an argument it was a 7 rounds to 5 Usyk fight if you want, but 7-5 Joshua was, I don't want to say ludicrous, but it was off the rails, totally, off the rails. But Usyk is now the world heavyweight champion, and we'll wait for him to fight Tyson Fury. I don't know how marketable fight that's going to be, a fighter from the UK and Ukraine here in the United States, because yesterday's fight, took place approximately 6 p.m. Eastern time. Here, it was broadcast on the Zone. A lot of fans couldn't see it. It's a type of fight that should have been on network TV here, and the time should have been geared for the United States for the evening, but it was taking place in Saudi Arabia, and I guess they were trying to accommodate the fans in the UK, meaning it would have come on about 11 p.m. UK time.
Yeah. Could you fight in Ireland?
What do you mean in Ireland?
Yeah, fight those Fury and the Ukrainian
Fury's a Britisher. Really, he's a British Fury. But, the fans from Ireland do cross over there.
Yeah, because it being a gypsy isn't that more Irish than...
Yeah, but I think the Fury's main fan base is in the UK, but he's developed a following in the United States. It's probably going to take place in Saudi Arabia because they have crazy money to give.
Oh, yeah, no question.
They'll outbid Las Vegas. They'll outbid the UK. And it's just the money talks at the end of the day.
Oh, no question. And any fight, the money talks. Yeah.
And at that point, would a potential fight between Usyk and Fury combine all of the belts? I mean, I know that Usyk wound up winning the IBO, the IBF, the WBO, and the WBA and the ring belts. And there's only the WBF belt that's left.
WBF is a minor thing. No, it won't. It won't. And if it does combine all the belts, whoever wins the fight is going to get stripped of one of the belts immediately after. Yesterday, there was a heavyweight fight on the undercard. It was an atrocious decision. A heavyweight from Croatia, Filip Harovic. It's even hard to pronounce the darn guy's name. Against the fighter from Beijing, Chang. Chang won the fight, but it was a terrible decision, which the crowd justifiably booed. And now that fight's going to be a mandatory with the IBF, meaning they're going to ask Usyk.
Let me ask you a question, Jack, about the fighting. I know there's still a lot of popularity in the welterweights, in the lower weights, but in the United States, in the heavyweights, there's a struggle at this point to find somebody that's maybe a step above the opponents. Don't you agree?
The most popular heavyweight, the best heavyweight, you'd have to say, is Deontay Wilder.
He got killed by Fury.
Well, he knocked Fury down a couple of times in the last fight. Let me throw this to you guys. He fought Fury 3 times, and I could say he came 1 second away from beating Fury in 2 of the fights. Yeah. First fight, Fury barely got up in time. In their third fight, he knocked him down twice. In the third round, I think it was, or the fourth round. And Fury, one of the knockdowns was for 9 count, and he hurt Fury pretty badly. He fights a fighter, Robert Helenius, on October 15th. Helenius is a big, tall, rangy fighter from Europe who's going to be hard to knock out because of his height, and Wilder's going to have a hard time reaching him at times, but Wilder should win the fight. Wilder, Joshua, let's say they matched both those two. That would be a massive fight. So the point is, even though Joshua lost yesterday, he might still be a bigger attraction than Usyk. He probably is.
How tall is Wilder?
Wilder, what he's announced that and what they say, he's announced it around 6'7".
Wow.
But what he actually is, heights are never accurate. Notice fighters get on the scale. We know their weights fight after fight, and we could estimate about what they weigh. But notice guys are never measured.
Yeah.
I mean, we're never sure. They wouldn't want to tell you what Mike Tyson's height was. What was it, about 5'10"? They don't want to announce that.
The only reason I asked that because Fury looked taller than Wilder when they were fighting. He looked like he was about an inch or 2 taller.
Yeah, Fury's about 6'9". Yeah, about 6'9" and a half. Yeah. But Fury has all that weight, so he's going to.
Yeah, he does. He is a big man, and he's got a heck of a reach.
Yeah, he does. Could any of those guys, could Fury have played football, Jim? Could you have coached?
It would have been hard to do. If you remember, the tallest guys were Ed Too Tall Jones and guys like that. The one who passed away, Ernie Ladd, was tall.
Ernie Ladd was a wrestler. Ernie Ladd was a wrestler.
He was a football player too.
I know, but he was, yeah. But
Big Daddy Lipton, they were taller players. Actually, Hutcherson is tall. That plays for the Detroit Lions. He's 6'7", but you very rarely find him. Even an offensive lineman, you don't find, and Pags probably agrees with this. You got a couple that were, Jonathan Ogden was 6'9", and he was every bit of 6'9", but you very rarely find super tall football players because it's hard to get that big.
Unless you're John Gannon, quarterback, and that's because he's got a 9-inch long neck.
Yeah.
Just in closing in the boxing, height really doesn't mean much unless a fighter can use it to his advantage and have the time. There was talk when Muhammad Ali was in his prime of Wilter Still Chamberlain boxing, and because of Chamberlain's height, people thought Chamberlain might actually have a chance to win. It would have been the equivalent of training Muhammad Ali to be a basketball player and putting him up against Magic.
But Ali had more height than you think, because I met him in person.
But he couldn't have been a basketball player no matter what he did with Ali.
But he could have been a football player and a heck of a one.
No, he would have been. Remember Steve Nehemiah, guys. Come on, a great athlete who couldn't play. I mean,
Ali was a great athlete.
Well, it's funny because as we're talking about boxing, I saw a commercial just maybe it was even yesterday or the day before with Evander Holyfield doing a very small little bit. He's sitting there and he's taking a donut out of somebody's hand. I think that was he didn't say a whole lot. Still looks in great shape.
Yeah,
like he could get back out there right now if he wanted to.
His son played for the Eagles, right on the practice squad, Evan Holyfield.
Yeah, that is correct. Actually, I think he even had a game or two where he dressed. So he was but he was a running back with the Eagles for a little while.
Guys, does that make the difference of a coach keeping a guy around? Case in point, Denzel Washington's son played in the NFL. So all factors equal, would a coach think, I want to put the kid on the team. I'd love having Denzel around, talk to the guys. It could help that way. I think all factors equal, it does make a difference.
I don't think so, unless the guy is good. Like, let's use the example. Ken Norton's son, Ken Norton Jr., was a big-time player.
Yeah,
he was a great, great athlete. But you want to hear an interesting thing? He never saw his father fight in person. His father wouldn't let him see him fight in person.
Wow.
And we're real good friends. And it said his dad never wanted to see him. His dad never wanted to see him fight in person. But Norton was a great athlete. We played basketball, football together. He was unique. But you don't see that a lot with boxers, sons. You see it with other sports, basketball, baseball, football, but you don't. That's unique. Because Holyfield was okay, but he wasn't even drafted.
And that brings up a very interesting question. I just let everybody. We're saying hello to Keith. Obviously, I just brought him on here because I felt like we could be going on for 20 minutes before we actually needed to bring him on. So I brought him on right away.
Pags like to pop me in with no warning at all, and I'm always surprised when I see myself there. So.
A man who needs no introduction is now joined us.
A man who 3 weeks ago was begging Mac for his Yankee card back.
Yeah, I'm in mourning right now because the Yankees are struggling. 4-14.
I'm not sure I want it back. Jeez, good grief.
Yeah,
Joey Gallo, where are you?
I'm waiting for my Joey Gallo update from Pags this morning. So
I haven't done it yet. I haven't even looked. So
tomorrow morning you can hook me up for the whole weekend.
Yeah, for the whole weekend you'll be all set up and ready to go. But this is where when you're talking about boxers and their sons, obviously, and that when you're when you are somebody who is an athlete, really of any sport, you have money to be able to send your kids to the different camps and things of that nature, so that they can start to gain the colors on the chip. Just kind of how you look at whether you're going to be a blue chip or 5-star chip, whatever you want to call it. That they get those ratings on that chip. So it's not a big surprise to me to hear that a boxer's son is excelling as an athlete in another sport, because I got to imagine boxers don't want their kids to box, that they want them to do other things because they're the ones that get hitting all the time.
Yeah.
Boxers are generally not good athletes. Sons of basketball players are going to be good athletes. Sons of football players are going to be good athletes. Baseball players. Boxers in general just aren't good athletes. It's just the way it is. But for whatever crazy reason, they've developed the skills inside the ring, where they can beat elite athletes all day. Their skill, their will, their determination is going to overcome the greatest athletes in the world. Like the great Jim Brown, when he used to play, people used to say, "Oh, Jim could be heavyweight champion of the world if he took up boxing." That's a bunch of rubbish.
Yeah.
Chances are Jim Brown maybe wouldn't have been any more than a 6-round fight, as great an athlete as he was. Maybe he could have transitioned to basketball, baseball, but boxing is kind of different, and it works both ways. The greatest boxers, you try putting them in the NFL, they'd get hit once, cutting the middle. They could get knocked out in the ring, but if they got tackled hard once, they might not want to know from football again.
Jack, you don't think there's a handful of guys, Jack? Because I was listening earlier before I came in, and Jim had mentioned Ali being able to play, and he seems like a kind of athlete that, again, with enough training, could play in the NFL.
Yeah, he would have transitioned.
And guys like Sugar Ray Leonard, who are great athletes as well as boxers. Not all boxers, but there's a handful, it seems, could have done it.
What about Carl Lewis? Did you see him work out with the Cowboys, Jim? They drafted
Carl Lewis. Wasn't very good.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. The greatest athlete of all.
But listen to this. Interesting. I played with a guy that took the silver medal in the Olympics. His name was Ron Brown. And he played DB and wide receiver. And he played in the NFL. He was a kick returner for the Cleveland Browns. He played for the Raiders and the Rams. And he was a tremendous. He could run backwards as fast as he could run forwards. So there is players that could do that.
No, the guys can run. Willie Gault was a great track and field athlete, but he's still running.
He's still running in the seniors division.
You're kidding.
Well, Carl Lewis, I don't know, but you got to look at Nehemiah. Ronaldo Nehemiah would have probably been a better, a guy.
He was awful. He was awful. He was a project. They kept waiting for him to get better. And
don't forget,
Philadelphia has a project right now.
Yeah,
he played college football. There's a difference. He's as much a football.
But he has he hasn't played in 5 years, right?
Correct. He spent his time trying to become the best hurdler in the world, and unfortunately lost his opportunity on that ridiculous 100th of a second false start. But I think about that, like the Eagles are really big on choosing guys like that, like Jeremy Bloom, who but he was like a skier, but was enough of an athlete that they tried him out. I think of and as ridiculous as it sounds, Tim Tebow, who tried to go from football to baseball and was enough of an athlete to at least have teams want to give him a cup of coffee. You know what I mean?
He didn't embarrass himself like MJ did.
I think it's your background. Let's say, take the case of Jim. When you were a young player with the Cowboys, if all of a sudden you quit football and decided you're going to take up wrestling, you had a wrestling background.
Yes.
At least you had that stored memory, of what you did before. So now if an athlete comes back to something he played in high school, maybe he could get the hang of it somewhat. That's why teams, for example, in an absolute emergency in football, they need a quarterback. If they have someone who played quarterback in high school who now plays another position, At least he has a
Yeah,
little
but here's the thing.
feel for it.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Pags. The tight end for the Chargers for many years. What was his name? The tight end who played basketball in college and then played football in the NFL.
Number 85, right? I think.
Yes.
Well, Tony Gonzalez played.
No, I know Gonzalez did.
Yeah.
He
Yeah,
it was the Chargers. He just retired a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And he was a basketball player. He wasn't a football player.
Is it like Kellen?
No, not
Winslow, right?
Not Winslow.
Antonio Gates.
Antonio Gates. He was a basketball player.
That's the guy.
There we go. Alan.
Alan got it for us.
Alan is the guy. Alan's the man. I'll tell you. He finds.
But that's who it was. The Gates was a basketball player. What, at Bowling Green or something like that? And he didn't play football. There's guys that can transition. They're good enough athletes.
Jim, you missed one of the best examples was Bob Hayes with the Cowboys.
That's true. That is true.
But there's a difference, Keith. That's strictly running. I mean, but Bob Hayes must have had a high school background in
He
football.
did. He was from Jacksonville. He played football,
But there you go. Yeah, he couldn't just take football up. It just couldn't have been. Yeah.
I mean, but there's obviously there are some athletes that will transition from one sport to another, and
yes,
of course there's it's rare that you hear the football basketball, especially once you start to get into college, because obviously they start to intersect each other, the seasons.
But here's the thing about when you talk about football, basketball, Julius Peppers. He played basketball at North Carolina. Greg Ellis, who I drafted, they played basketball at North Carolina, but they were tremendous football players. They were tremendous, but they did play basketball. Now, were they, Gonzalez was a heck of a basketball player.
Dave Winfield. Dave Winfield was drafted in 3 different sports.
And you talk about guys, but
it's
it's far and few between.
Yeah.
Right, that's what I think. I think that you see more baseball players, football/baseball players, just due to the fact that, and it's usually, again, that's where you see the wide receivers, quarterbacks, and D-backs that do that. You don't really see many defensive linemen or offensive linemen that are doing both.
Yeah, like probably one of the greatest athletes, people like Kirk Gibson. Kirk Gibson would have been a first rounder in baseball and football if he was a wide receiver for Michigan State, and he was big time.
I watched Warfolk in like a home run hitting contest one day. I think that somebody should have signed him, except he weighed about 450.
A lot of, and you talk about that, Pags. If you look back through the history of football, a lot of those players did play baseball. We had Kevin Gogan, and he was about 6'7", over 300 pounds. He was a catcher that got drafted by the Yankees.
Wow. He was offensive tackle, right, Jim?
Yeah, offensive, tackle, guard.
Yeah.
Even as most recent as Micah Parsons.
That's
Parsons,
true.
they just did a thing up here, a charity event a few months ago, where they said he swung a bat better than he thought that they think. They were doing it up in Lehigh Valley, so they have a AAA team up there. They were saying that he swung a bat better than half of the team. So
him and AJ Brown were going at it, correct?
Correct. So
then how come these elite athletes, especially NFL and former NFL players, they can't play golf, which is a skillful thing? Case in point is Jeff Coach terrible at golf. He's awful.
Hey, Jack, I had Eagles and I had 5 30s. Don't say that.
I'm just going based on Byron Williams, what he said.
Byron is jealous. He can't outfish me. Now I'm catching up to him in golf. He's just jealous.
Jim, I'll tell you something. Let's do this. You and I will go out and play Jack and Mac in golf for any amount they want to play for. How about that?
I'll be the ref. I'll be the ref like I am in Caddyshack. Just pay me off, and I'll call the game fair.
You're going to drive the beer cart around, Pags.
There you go. Perfect. Yeah, you definitely don't want me golfing. I give everybody the one pointer that I got. Bring Vaseline and put it on the head of the on the club, and then it stops the spin. It stops the spin from happening.
Oh my goodness!
It's not really.
Mac shaking his head again because he's like, every time I've been gone a while, I come back every show I'm on to talk about golf.
No, we haven't talked. This is NFL Sunday. What do you guys think? I want to start off with my Jets to lead off. Robert Saleh, the head coach, he's not sure whether he's going to play his starters against the Falcons. He admits he's going back and forth. I think that indecisiveness, if you're feeling that indecisiveness, keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
He's scared, you know.
You think it's concerned over injuries?
Yeah, he's a concern. So what's going to happen if he starts his starters and someone gets hurt? He's setting himself up for the blame, just the overall indecisiveness. But it shows what these exhibition games, it's like it's a pain in the butt to him. Why don't you just leave your starters home and evaluate your backups to see who makes the team?
To my point on this one, and I hear you, Jack, but it's how mature your team is. Some teams can get away with that, and because they have a veteran leadership. But if you're a younger team or a team that's transitioning to a new coach, that's a little bit different because your players have to get used to that coaching style to be successful. What is that?
You're hearing the music in the background. Yeah. That could be only one thing. When you hear that song.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no. We got everybody.
We got a full panel today. And I love playing that music. That's his intro music from here on out. You know, Robert Palmer in the house.
Yeah. Good to see you, Mac.
Good to see you too, Robert.
All right, buddy.
Well, Rob, the thing I meant to mention, I keep forgetting each week, that thing you have in the backdrop, as soon as it comes on, I'm always thinking it's a Pittsburgh Steeler thing, and I can't hook you up with the Steelers. Why? Come on with the Steelers.
Oh, it's a sports scope emblem, yeah.
Yeah. Right next to that big brown curtain it is. So
hey,
we're ready to, you know.
Before we get out of it, we're supposed to be talking. Keith, how did you think the Patriots played this week?
Well, they played better. Matt Patricia called all the plays for the offense instead of this whole, committee.
Yeah.
And Mac Jones made a point to say that he's really, he's a bright guy. He'll figure this out. I think if they give him the reins, and I think he's going to get that position. He won't get the title because they're just not going to pay him the title.
Yeah.
But I think he'll be calling the plays. Mac Jones made a point after the game to talk about how much he's improved in his play calling. I shouldn't say improved. He's getting more confident in what he's doing because he's a bright guy. He's got a brilliant football mind as well as a brilliant mind in general. And I think he will be okay if they just let him be. And stop with this whole, throwing Joe Judge into the mix here myself. Yeah. So I think they played.
Matt Patricia is an Ivy League guy too.
Yeah, but RPI he went to here down the street from me. He's got an engineering degree. I say this all the time. He's literally a rocket scientist.
Yeah, but here's the thing they said about. I think the quarterback Jones said that he likes Patricia calling the plays because he knows the weakness to the defense.
Exactly.
And he can explain to them how to attack defenses. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I thought that from the beginning that he could do this job because of his knowledge of defense. And I think Mac Jones, I think his endorsement will, he's a second-year player, I get it, but I think his endorsement will do some.
Now, here's the question. Defenses are coached different than offenses. Do you think Patricia can do that and understand that offensive players are totally different when you coach? You can't coach them like defensive players.
Right. Well, it's going to be an adjustment, right? And then, look, he's a good coordinator. He's a good football guy. He failed as a head coach, obviously, which a lot of great coordinators do.
Bill Belichick.
And Bill Belichick in his first one, he failed in Cleveland.
A lot of guys fail their first time around for sure. Yeah. And I think he can do this. I think they made him. They need to make a decision. I don't want to go into next week and see Joe Judge calling the plays. I just don't.
I want to see Mac Jones calling the plays. What is wrong with a quarterback calling the plays? I can understand a guy like a Zach Wilson in his second year isn't as mature as Mac Jones. Mac Jones by all accounts, has a brilliant mind. He's a leader. He picks up the playbook quickly. Let him call his own plays and have him, Matt Patricia, assist him basically. If you see he's struggling, then call the plays for him. I mean, let's say,
Yeah.
are the plays called for Aaron Rodgers? Because I don't think he would put up with it if plays were sent and he didn't like. He would be, calling audibles all the time.
Yeah, but I think he probably is. I don't know that Aaron Rodgers is calling his own plays. Robert, maybe you want to weigh in here, but I don't know that there's an NFL quarterback today that's necessarily calling all his own plays. I think they're coming in and they got the ability to check off if they want to.
I agree. They give them plays and they can check off, but
yeah,
they don't have plays sent in. Because that's why they have the radio in the helmet.
Yeah. So,
and you could look at it both ways. Guys like Jim Kelly, Boomer Esiason, they called their own plays.
That was different time.
But that was a different time. But you got also the coaches are up in the box and they see things that the player might not see, and sometimes they can radio it down to them.
Agreed.
But isn't it the relationship with the quarterback and the coordinator, the person, who calls the plays? If they have a great relationship and there's a trust there, okay, it could work. But if you don't have complete faith in the guy sending in the plays, it just doesn't work as well to me.
Well, don't you think that's happening in Baltimore, the Ravens, with Jackson?
Yeah.
Is that they don't have the whole. You hear with Hollywood Brown, he didn't blame Jackson; he blamed the coordinator.
Yeah, that's not a good thing when they're not on the same page like that, for sure. I mean, they don't have to love each other. Tom Brady didn't have a great relationship. Well, he had great relationships, but he blew up at Josh McDaniel on the sideline more. And once he's got a famous video, if you go watch it, him and Bill O'Brien getting into it, probably 10 years or so ago.
Yeah, but even Peyton Manning blew up.
Yeah.
Same with Simpson Parcells. They blew up at each other all the time.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, there's some great video of that.
John Elway and Dan Reeves used to go at it. There was tension.
Yeah. So, but going back to this Patricia Judge situation, when the moment that they make a decision and it goes against one of those two, obviously, does the other one feel slighted? Feel like maybe they need to move on? And realistically, especially after how horrendous a job Judge did at the Giants, is it something that he may feel like he needs to get out of this Belichick tree and maybe go be a coordinator somewhere else, so that he
didn't he go to Alabama at one time, or Mississippi, one of them, somewhere in SEC?
I'm not sure about Joe Judge. I know Bill O'Brien's at Alabama now, but as far to the question, it's funny. I thought about the same thing when I was reading Mac Jones' comments yesterday, and it looked like Patricia was taking the lead in this competition, if that's what you want to call it. And I did think that it's possible the loser here could feel a bit slighted, especially if it's funny. I think it'd be more so if it's Joe Judge. I just feel like he's going to be the one who's going to take it worse if he doesn't get this job. But, and again, what's the job? Because it's not offensive coordinator. It's just, they're still going to have the titles that they have, and one's going to call the plays.
And Judge's background is special teams, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, this whole thing, and I don't know if we talked about it here. I talked about it elsewhere. It might have been on one of my shows. The whole thing to me rings so odd with knowing how Belichick runs his teams and looks to put players in the best position to succeed. And he wants his coaches to do the same thing. And he's doing the opposite here because the defense needed some help. He could have made Matt Patricia the defensive coordinator. The special teams needed some help. They weren't as good as they've been the last year, especially. He could have made Joe Judge the special teams coordinator and put them in the jobs that they do best. But he decided to move them both to the offensive side of the football. So that I thought this whole situation was kind of interesting from the outset.
But don't you feel it's some nepotism because he wants his son to succeed?
Definitely. I do think there's something there. I hope there's not because, look, Steve Belichick might be a good coach one day. Steve Belichick does not have a lot of history in the game and experience like these other guys do. And look at Gerard Mayo, to me, is the main guy in that defensive. We talk about Steve Belichick a lot. Gerard Mayo's a guy who's going to be, he was almost a head coach this year. I'd be surprised if he's not a head coach in the NFL next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, listen, guys, I don't know. I think that if you look at everything the way it is right now, the Patriots are in contention in the East with Buffalo and Miami.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't think the Giants are in contention with anybody in the NFC East right now. So if you're gonna make a bet, if you're gonna say who's gonna finish, around first place in the AFC East, there's three teams, right? There's Miami, there's New England, and of course there's the Dolphins. So I mean,
I think the Jets will have a better season than the Dolphins this year.
Yeah, you think so?
Wow.
I do.
Wow, that's a strong statement.
It is. I know it is, but I have not got a good feel of what's going on down there in Miami.
Let me ask you a question about this. And I was looking at some games, and can you get to a point where you get too excited about certain teams?
No.
Point in that I'm making, I was watching the Packers against the Saints, and the Packers got after them. And then I was watching Seattle against the Bears, and the Bears, Justin Fields looks like he's taking a step in the right direction. Can you get too excited about certain teams? And Denver gets blown out. And Denver looked good against Dallas last week.
I can't put a lot of stock into the preseason games myself. It's more the stuff that comes out of camp. And Robert, I don't know, you're probably following them closer than I am as far as in whole. But I pay more attention to the news I hear coming out of the camps and the combined workouts and these types of things than I do the actual preseason games.
But then to that point is Tom Brady probably won't be back this week.
Yeah, don't get me going on that.
Do you think Brady can walk in and just go play a player like that? That's what I'm asking is, do you think Brady can just walk in, even at 45 and the things he knows, can he physically do it?
I think they're making a huge mistake here. And again, I hope there's nothing more than, again, by all accounts, there's nothing urgent that he had to leave for. This was a plan that they had all along. And I think it's to his detriment. And I think it's to the team's detriment even more than his. I did a vlog on it and I got a lot of negative response saying Brady knows what he needs to do to get focused for the season. And I don't disagree. He knows what he needs to do to get it ready. But he needs to get ready with his team. His team is here getting ready to play an 17-game season, and he's not there. There's a lot of new people. There's new coaches. I think
his kids are off for the summer, so he took the time with Giselle. He compromised. He could play when the kids go back to school. He's spending time with them doing stuff in the summer.
I agree with you.
And the Buccaneers are willing to give him that compromise.
Then retired. He retired.
Otherwise, they got Kyle Trask as their quarterback. Come on, what would you do?
Nobody's
quarterback.
Nobody's been a bigger fan, a bigger supporter, and backing Tom Brady with all the bashing that's come for his way in 20 years than me. This is not the way you go about building a football team, in my mind, that's going to be competitive and going to be a cohesive unit when your quarterback, your leader, isn't there for 3/4 of the camp.
Yeah, and they got beat by the Titans 13-3.
Yeah. My guess is Giselle gave him an ultimatum, and she said, we do this planned trip or I file a divorce. I cannot imagine somebody like Tom Brady taking 2 weeks off in the middle of – it's just not his DNA, guys.
I back Giselle 100%. She's going to put up with a lot for that guy. I back Giselle completely. She's a good person.
I just don't think it's good for team chemistry, but, he is the GOAT.
Listen, and you know what, Jim and Robert and all you guys, and you all weigh in on this. One of my biggest problems with this is, yes, the team building aspect of it, and the fact that it's hypocritical for Tom Brady to do this. If one of his teammates had done this in the past, he'd have been all up in their face, guaranteed.
No,
Antonio Brown.
Yeah. So it's hypocritical.
Gronk is going to do the same thing. Gronk might show up in November if didn't play.
Different situation.
No, Brady has earned it, guys.
Brady's the quarterback and the leader of his team.
They earn that right to, set their own schedule, and I think the players understand it.
But Jack, if he goes and throws 5 touchdowns, everybody's gonna say he's the GOAT. But if he throws 5 interceptions, why didn't he go to training camp? I don't know the answer.
Yeah,
I'm just.
I look at the first 4 weeks of football as training camp, anyways. That's what happened now because they don't play like they used to back in the day, true. Even about 10, 15 years ago. The first 4 games is everybody's training camp. That's why the teams that have played more usually do well in those first 4 games. The teams that do not have to get it all together, and then the cream rises over the remaining 13.
If it was completely up to the players, they'd show up right before, Jim. Your Cowboy teams, Michael Irvin would show up if he was allowed to 1 week before, the season began, and he'd fine-tune and just
Jack, he never showed up. Actually, he was there early. Emmitt Smith did 1 year, if you remember. He was holding out, but Michael Irvin never held out.
But they had to be there early. I mean,
running backs are a different beast, though.
Yeah,
you got to protect your running backs because they have such a short lifespan.
Yeah.
Even the great ones, it's just a different beast. But Michael was always on. He was there. He was there early.
Well,
Can I say something? Keith mentioned a little while ago the exhibition games are completely meaningless. For the most part, I agree with him. But if I were the Denver Broncos, I'd be alarmed. If you give up 6 touchdowns in a row to Buffalo, and I know Buffalo has a high-powered offense, that's alarming. Exhibition season and not 6 TDs in a row. I mean, that sets up red flags to me.
Well, yeah, I mean, you don't want to set a precedent like that in preseason, obviously. I did miss something. What did the Ravens do, Pags? I know you're
they play tonight at 8:00.
Oh, they play tonight, right? Okay.
Yeah, it's Arizona. The Battle of the Birds. The Battle of the Birds.
Was it 21 games, right, Pag?
21 games. They have not lost a game since 2015.
Wow.
And it could have been 22 games, except they didn't play on the field. Well, no, that was wild. That was before. I was back in the vet days.
How many Super Bowls they won in that? John Harbaugh.
I wonder, obviously, because I know that everybody poo-poos past this record of 21 straight wins in the preseason, but to win 21 things in a row in any capacity is a little bit of a feat. The fact that these games don't matter at all, and they've won 21, and they've done it the same exact way everybody else has. It's not like that they're playing their starters when everybody else isn't. They've been doing this the same way. What does that really say? I don't necessarily mean that it says anything about the players on the field, but maybe the coaching staff. Is the coaching staff actually maybe that much more in tune with each other that early in the season? Is that what that would more signify? Or the fact that maybe that their plans for the preseason are more easily picked up by the players that are there in camp in comparison to other camps? Like what does this record signify, if anything?
That's a good question. I think it shows you that their system and what they utilize in their system is easy to teach because it must be the same thing over and over, and the players can pick it up. It's just they have certain schemes they utilize every preseason. People know, but the players also know it and how to make it effective.
I know this much. They haven't reached a Super Bowl in the years they've been winning these 21 in a row. So I don't know how much it means. Well, I guess if I wanted to see what it really meant, Pags, is what's their record, say the first month of the season since they've had this. Maybe there it matters because they get off to a better start than other teams. Then it would mean something more to me. And I don't know that answer off the top of my head, but I have a hard time getting my head around it.
I mean, so the first thing that immediately comes to my mind as you say that is that the year that Detroit went 0-16, they went 4-0 in the preseason.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah, we went 1-15. We went 4-0.
There you go. So in that case, ultimately, I feel like when you're a new coach and like Jimmy Johnson, you guys played a lot more in the preseason.
Yes,
you were playing halves and then 3/4 of a game, and then that 4th preseason game you didn't play as much. But you guys were playing half, 3/4, just about full game, and then the 4th game was like the throwaway where you're just putting the rest of your 53-man roster together. it's not that way anymore. Obviously, they're not playing. They're not playing their top 30 people. They're only playing the other 60 really to figure out who's going to make those 23 spots.
Yeah, the last, like Parcells used to always say, when you're playing in the preseason, you'll find out the bottom of your roster.
Yeah.
Who is going to be on the bottom of your roster.
It says a lot about management, scouting, the organization. They put an emphasis on line play, defense, pass rush. Lamar Jackson, how many other teams would he be successful in with this? Yeah. I mean, they drafted Mark Andrews. They put an emphasis on offensive line. They're still keeping it with the basics, and they do a good job, guys. Even when they had all those injuries, they were in a lot of games last year, including Green Bay.
Yeah.
Backups everywhere when they play Green Bay.
That's true.
You know, if this team had a Ben Roethlisberger type of player, there's no telling how many Super Bowls they would have. If they had like a superstar quarterback. Think about the quarterbacks they've had. Joe Flacco. Who's the guy in 2000? I can't remember his name. He beat us.
Trent Dilfer.
Trent Dilfer, for crying out loud. You know.
Lamar Jackson was an MVP, so how can you say, well, if they had Ben Roethlisberger? Jackson, even last year before he got hurt, he single-handedly seemed to win 3 games for them with heroics.
Here's the thing that you hear a lot about him, and the coordinator's name is Greg Roman, is that Steve Young said this, which is interesting because there's a lot of similarities between Young and Jackson. And you said, what are you talking about? But he said that they are not making Lamar Jackson a better passer, and that's why he struggles. And that's on the coordinator to make him become a better thrower.
Hey guys, I gotta take a quick break here and take care of some business, and I'll be right back.
Thanks, Mac. Okay. All right. Yeah.
Well,
I just, you know, he had the that 1 year, Jack, but you got to look at the other years he was hurting. But he's the most rushing attempting quarterback in the history of the game. Guys, he's going to outrush Cam Newton, who leads the NFL. Cam Newton's out of a job right now. Now, he's 33.
There's nothing wrong to me with a running quarterback. The reason coaches don't want their quarterbacks to run because they're scared they're going to get hurt. Lamar Jackson is the best runner in the NFL. Like you're asking me, but it's not named running back because he's a quarterback. Yep. But he's the most effective runner. I'd like him to run as long as he hits the deck on time.
How many of those guys have won Super Bowls?
But even at Tennessee with Malik Willis right now, and Mike Vrabel wants to keep him in the pocket. Look, if he feels pressured and he could take off and get a big gain, and he knows when to go down and get out of bounds in time, you know, let him do it. I mean, you're trying to restrict these guys.
Well, Jack, what do we play the game for? To win championships. And how many of these quarterbacks have won championships? I can't think of one.
Quarterbacks are so protected these days. It's not like it used to be.
If you remember, Steve Young early in his career was a mobile, but he did when he went to San Francisco.
He would be the closest guy, Jim, that I would say it's one of those.
Other than that, you don't see very many. Now you've seen guys get there. McNabb was in a Super Bowl. Yeah, obviously Cam Newton. And
he was gassed at the end of the game. Was that because he runs around too much?
Wait. And you know who was gassed at the end of the game? Like Jeff Coat when he played against Randall Cunningham. Cunningham was running ragged. Jeff Coat had nothing left at the end of the game. He was all done by the fourth quarter.
Jim, how many Super Bowl trophies?
Cunningham's movement. He tired these
Don't even argue with Jack. Jack is on it. He's just
how many Super Bowl trophies do you have, Jim?
I have 2.
How many does Jack have? What's that?
That's one more than the Jets.
And one more than the Jets, and two more than Randall Cunningham, by the way.
Yeah,
Jack. Lamar,
I'm a big Randall.
Randall Cunningham's daughter, could get Olympic gold. I mean,
yes, and the high jump.
There you go.
Yes,
Jack.
He was
Lamar,
a great athlete.
He got hurt last year, and mind you guys, he was hurt in the Buffalo game. In the playoff before that. So it's turning into a trend. He's going, the law of averages has already caught him.
Yeah.
They're going to pay him, but I'm just saying those are part of the fact.
RG3.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Flamed out fast.
Michael Vick, as
gotta run.
good as Michael Vick was, the injuries finally caught him.
Guys, if the offensive line blocked better, they wouldn't have to run the quarterback. Okay? They don't do it out of choice a lot of times. There's lousy blocking, and they got to take off and make a split decision to throw the ball.
Well, here's the thing, Jack. You say that, but Wilson was running, right? Zach Wilson. Nobody touched him, and he blew out his a PCL.
Yeah.
So that argument doesn't work.
Right.
And yes, Jim's got one more than Rodgers too. I had to appreciate that.
Aaron Rodgers fan.
And just because Alan likes to mention this is the third time that he mentioned this about
yes, he did, Alan.
And I tell you, so how much of that? Let's touch on this just for a quick second. How much of that was more because the Chargers special teams is in shambles? They've been having horrendous. Both preseason games that they've had have led up like punt returns of like 40 yards and kickoff returns back to the 35, 40-yard line. How much of that is more on the team that they're playing against in comparison to Turpin himself?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
And you make a good point. But Turpin was the MVP of the USFL.
Yeah.
He was the MVP. And he's always been dangerous in the kicking game. I mean, to get a kickoff and a punt return, that's really unusual. So I think you're right. I think they have some issues on special teams. I think everybody's been talking about Herbert, but Herbert can't win the game by himself.
Yeah.
There's other positions that have to step up. But they have a good defense. Their offense could be some, but their special teams have to be corrected. So
I think it goes to the point. I think you said it earlier, Jim, about, do we get too excited about certain,
Exactly.
This is a perfect example of
that is a perfect example.
Maybe it will transfer over. We don't know if it'll transfer to real games, but this is an example of getting very excited about something that may never mean anything.
Yeah, because everybody has a short memory when it comes to season. If he can't do these things during the season, then we got a problem.
Yeah. Good point.
But it does get you excited, and that might be that one block, or the excitement might help you get in position to make a play and help him get a touchdown.
But also not for nothing, because he did play in the USFL and was the MVP. I think he played for the Breakers, so they made it to the playoffs. The New Orleans Breakers, they made it to the playoffs. He's probably in much more game shape than most of these other guys, because he has been playing all this time.
That is a good point.
I mean, it's like I can appreciate, because there was like 15 guys out of the USFL who wound up who are still currently on NFL rosters, and that was part of what they expected from this. That they were expecting that there's. Hey, you're going to have the USFL. That's why we're going to have it in the spring, because we're going to have the opportunity to be able to send guys over to the NFL. And that's all we need, is one guy to start to make it a little bit big. That this guy just
make a good point.
2 touchdowns in a preseason game. The USFL is going to tout that for as long as they can, because
especially with the XFL coming back. You're right.
Right. So that I kind of believe that this is, like I said, this is good for the USFL in a lot of ways, and good for him as well, because, like I said, he's in much more game shape than really anybody else who's on that field, just because he's played for the last 3 months, 4 months.
Great point. Guys, I got to jump in a great conversation. Glad to be back this week after missing last week. Mac, welcome back, as I keep saying on all the shows I see you. And, thanks for having me this morning, guys. I got to jump, though.
All right.
Have
a great seeing you already.
Have a great, guys. Hey, guys.
Jamie, you make a good point about the Chargers, and they just gave Derwin James a ton of money, and he's been injured. He is a well of a player, well of a safety. They've got Khalil Mack there. If this team don't make the playoffs, Brandon Staley is on the hot seat
I agree.
with this kind of talent here, with this team. And I do think that they're going to play well. But if they're giving up big special teams plays to the other three quarterbacks in this division, they're not going to win. I mean, not against Mahomes and Russell Wilson and Derek Carr in your division. A second-year coach being on the hot seat with a guy like Herbert, with the roster like that, with the expectation. Plus, there's a possibility they may go after the linebacker. I can't remember his name from the Bears. Is wanting to trade
Roquan Smith.
Roquan Smith.
Well,
there
he returned to camp with them. He's going to play the year out.
Yeah. They
He
may
said he's
still
gonna
make
bet
an
on
aggressive
himself.
move, though. You never know.
He said he's going to bet on himself.
Yeah. And that's a good point. A guy like Brandon Staley, somebody you wouldn't think that would be on the hot seat, I think he will be.
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
There's going to be some shockers.
You know who was in Saudi Arabia yesterday at ringside watching
Tom Brady?
Usyk and Joshua? OBJ, Odell Beckham Jr. Now, you would think he would be rehabbing somewhere in contact with NFL teams. I don't get it. The season's going to start in a couple of weeks. OBJ should be close to home, contacting teams.
Not a chance. We are. Come on. I mean, I know what is. I could be his agent right now. We're not signed until week 10 when we get closer to coming back to the NFL. I'm going to pick a team that I think is going to possibly, go to the Super Bowl, and I get to choose who I play for and how I get my ring. That's kind of exactly what he's going to do. And ultimately,
he should be in for the contract. He got the ring with the Rams.
Come on, he's got an ego. The ego's all about the ring. I mean, because that's realistically, and I'll be honest, it's a smart way of doing it because you wind up getting. So, all right, I'm going to make a salary of however much for however long I decide to play. So I can make $4 or $5 million for 8 weeks of play, 9 weeks of play, get myself another ring, and then I could go and figure out what I want to do next year. I can miss training camp. I can get myself in game shape during the season. I can pick whatever team I want to go to at the end, towards the end of the season by being a free agent, and I can pick and choose who I want to go to. Now, the team that's going to go has got to want him, so there has to be a need as well. But ultimately, why wouldn't you want to get OBJ at the end of the season? Doesn't matter who you're at.
Think that way. Guys, why do they think that way? You take the case of Antonio Brown. The Raiders signed him for big, big money, and he got out of that contract to go to New England for a lot less money, and he probably didn't get too much to play for Tampa Bay in comparison. Well, I mean, is the ring that much worth it, to be on a winner, to bypass like $40 million, let's say? I hate to say it, guys. I mean, but I would go for the $40 million over the ring.
Yeah, but if you're getting paid, so all right, but you want $40 million. But if you're getting a $40 million type of contract and only filling out like 7, 8 games or 6 games, instead you're getting that prorated, does it matter? You're still getting the same amount of money. You're putting less wear and tear on your body, and you're fighting for. Yeah, you're going into the playoffs. You're getting into more prime time. All he's got to do is make one catch. I mean, that's all he had to do. Like what he did with with Rams. He was able to have a halfway decent game for as long as he was in. That was it. And now he's hurt, and he could go wherever he wants to, and he can command that as long as the team wants him and they have a need for him.
I agree.
So I would do that. I would absolutely do that because there's a good chance one of the 14 teams that's going into the playoffs is going to need a wide receiver.
Yes, I agree.
He might be good for Malik Willis there, Rob, because Malik Willis is creating a bit of a buzz in Tennessee. Yeah. He's a fan favorite. As soon as Tannehill throws an interception, they'll start booing him and calling for Malik Willis.
Well, he is a well of an athlete. A lot of these teams, they wait after week 1, Jim, so they won't have to guarantee that contract.
That is true.
Somebody may bring in an Antonio Brown. I think it's crazy.
Wow.
But maybe an Odell Beckham, one of those guys. Don't have to guarantee their contract. That's food for thought. I wouldn't sign Antonio Brown for all the tea in China.
No,
that's just
your
me.
locker room. It's a
locker room guy. Yeah,
he's going to destroy your locker room.
But
yeah, and that's the hard part about that. You can't, like, you wouldn't have Terrell Owens for the same reason right now.
No
it's
way.
just there's the squeeze isn't worth the juice.
Exactly. But that's exactly right. That's exactly
Hey, listen, we're at the halfway point. Let's go a quick commercial break and come back fairly quickly because we know Robert's got to roll out of here soon.
Yes.
So let's go hit this quick commercial break, and we'll be back right after these messages.
The Hometown Foundation is excited to bring back the Dream Ride experience, August 26th to the 28th at Connecticut's Farmington Polo Club. Join us in celebrating the accomplishments of our Dream Riders while enjoying live music, a car and motorcycle show, family fun zone, pet adoptions, canine demonstrations, the Fireman's Chili Cook-Off, and much, much more. Get your tickets today.
Mr. Green?
Yeah.
You need any help?
Mm-mm.
I just want you to know, I think you're the best ever.
Yeah, sure.
Want my Coke? It's okay, you can have it.
No.
Really, you can have it.
Okay.
A Coke and a smile makes me feel good, makes me feel nice.
See you around.
That's the way it should be. I like to see
Hey, kid.
the whole world is smiling with me. Coca-Cola has life. Have a Coke and
Thanks, Mean Joe.
smile.
When you drive to Wendy's and order a single, you get more beef than the Whopper or the Big Mac. At Wendy's, you never have to ask, where's the beef?
You know, one of the best things about being an ex-big leaguer is getting freebies to the game. Call the front office, bingo. And once these fans recognize me, I probably won't even have to pay for my light beer from Miller. Down it, I love them. These fans know I drink light because it's less filling and it tastes great. Good seats, huh?
You're in the wrong seat, buddy. Come on.
Oh, I must be in the front row.
Come on.
Light beer from Miller. Everything you always wanted in a beer and less.
Good seats, hey, buddy. He missed the tag. He missed the tag.
What's up, everybody? Philly Sports Guy here, and it's fantasy football season. And if you want me to announce your order of your draft, all you have to do is go to Cameo. Go ahead and look up the Philly Sports Guy and tell me who's in your draft, and I'll choose who goes first, who goes last, so that you don't have to worry about whether the commissioner's cheating and getting the first pick again this year. So reach out to the Philly Sports Guy on Cameo for not only fantasy football, but for all your messaging needs. I'll give you a shout out. I'll get happy birthday. I can say hello to the troops overseas or anything else you want to have messaged about. So reach out for the Philly Sports Guy on Cameo. And go Birds! Yeah!
I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboys fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready. I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face. Oh, I'm from Brooklyn. Hey, get us an each.
Pags, that's cool about your cameo. I'm gonna have you cameo that you love the Cowboys. I'm paying
Yeah,
for
good
it.
luck with that. Good luck with that.
Hey guys, before we get going, let's talk a little bit about Dream Ride and what it really is and what it means to a lot of people. You know, you can go to dreamride.org and make a donation, any donation, $1, $5. I mean, they love it all. So if you go there, you donate or go down to see them at the Polo Grounds where they have those big events, and you get to join in those events and meet some really great people. You know, they're there for the kids. They're there for the adults who have cancer. I know personally about that. So, yeah, get down there and into Connecticut or give them a call at dreamride.org and make a donation. The kids will really love it, guys.
Amen.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great organization, and they do a motorcycle run all the way from Florida. They stop in different locations and they start collecting people. By the time, I think it starts with like 50 to 75 people. By the time they get up to Connecticut, they say they have about 500 strong in that ride. So it really is an amazing thing to kind of watch, and you have all those people riding motorcycles all the way from Florida on up to Connecticut. Of course, they got to ride them back too, which I'm sure is not as much fun. But dreamride.org, definitely go check them out.
Yeah. You know, guys, I wanted to answer Jack's question about a comment about Malik Willis. I am surprised that his ability to catch up to the pro speed so fast as far as getting away from the pass rush, even for guys who are known to be fast players. I think he had like 46 yards rushing last night. Made a really good move in the Ravens game. Probably couldn't do that in the regular season to score a touchdown as well. Arm strength is there. He's trying to stay in the pocket more. He's got good intangibles. I'm reading day-by-day practice. Really good body language, good intangibles, good attitude. And really the competition, guys, is him and this Logan Whiteside. Which is probably going to be
in the AAF.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he'll probably
for
be
San
back
Antonio.
maybe USFL next year or selling insurance here in Nashville, because I don't think he's going to beat out Malik Willis. So
yeah, but here's the thing you got to remember about Willis is he was at Auburn. He was at a Power 5 school. People think of Liberty, but he was at a Power 5 school, and his athleticism is off the charts. He just got to learn the game.
You know, it's what a team invests in him. Willis was a third-round draft selection, so I don't feel he's an automatic spot in the future. No. Eyeing him as such, unlike a Trey Lance, who they gave up the 49ers gave up a couple of number ones to move up and get. So they've got to start Trey Lance at some point, and this is the time this year. But if Ryan Tannehill plays well going forward, it's not automatic that his job's going to be in jeopardy. I mean, it's not like they're necessarily looking to move on from Ryan Tannehill.
Right. And, you know, that Cincinnati defense, they did pick off Patrick Mahomes twice. Nobody's getting rid of Patrick Mahomes, too.
Yep.
They were playing at a high level, Jim, last year.
No, I think you're right. I just think what happened is he didn't have Derrick Henry to lean on.
Yeah.
And that makes a difference because you're play action. Then now they don't have to worry about the run as much as they did before with a guy like Henry because he's a phenomenal player.
Yeah.
And that helped Tannehill.
Can Henry come back and be as good as he was? You know, these backs only have a limited amount of years.
I agree. That's the interesting question, and Robert probably can answer it better.
Well, they picked up this guy, and I don't know why I can't call his name. He was with Michigan last year.
Kenneth Walker. I thought he was in Seattle. Walker.
No. You're talking about Michigan State.
Michigan State, yeah.
Yeah. He's the guy that ran all over Ohio State. Had a good game.
Over in Michigan, yes.
Yeah, and fourth-round pick, I think Tennessee got good value there. He's having a good camp. Had a pretty good game yesterday. Tennessee didn't lose that much. I'm not as down on them. I think a lot of the locals, myself included, we overreacted to the playoff loss. They lost A.J. Brown. That was it. The defensive line's there. The secondary will be better. Now I'm leaning back towards maybe picking them over the Colts because I'm just not in love with Matt Ryan to win the South again for the third straight year. But they can't be one and done in the playoffs.
But what about the receivers? He's showing any? Is it Burks?
He's had some good days and bad days. He's not where they would want him to be.
Do you have asthma something? Their receiver,
Trayvon Burks.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken.
He's from Arkansas.
No. He said, did he have asthma?
Asthma.
Yes, he had asthma. Yeah.
Yeah, that held him back in camp.
That held him back in many camps, but he did pass conditioning in the regular camps in July. But they got Robert Woods is having a really good camp. Keely Westbrook, this guy's got an odd last name. He's having a good camp. They picked up Austin Hooper, really good tight end. That's what they lacked last year, guys.
Yeah.
He used to play with Cleveland and Atlanta. The offensive line's intact. I think they're going to be fine. They'll probably be a little bit better defensively. They may have a slow start offensively, but I'm over my time. I got to get out of here, guys.
All right.
Thanks for stopping.
All right, Robert. Thank you very much for coming in. I got to
have a good show, guys.
All right, Robert.
Thanks
Great
again.
seeing you.
Yeah.
Now we got to give him exit music, Pags.
Yeah, he got it. Caught me off guard. He's like, "Yeah, I got to go. See you, bye." You know. So.
One question I can't is about in boxing is when did the music begin when they would enter the ring to their song? You take the fight of the century, Ali Frazier. They didn't enter to any music.
Didn't they have music?
When did it begin? I don't know the answer.
I don't know. I thought they had music.
You know what it is? When it began, it probably wasn't considered to be historic.
Yeah.
So no one made like a big deal out of it, and it would just be like a little bit of a gimmick. But then it took off, and no fighter is going to enter the ring without the music. Everyone has to have their song.
Yeah, I guess so.
I mean, listen. That's what happens at baseball. I mean, every Philly that goes up to bat has a walking up song. Actually, they have two walking up songs. Absolutely.
Wow, I didn't know that.
So, it's like Kyle Schwarber, the guy who's hitting the most home runs this year. He walks up to Cult of Personality. So it's everybody's got their my favorite happens to be Bryson Stott, who goes up to That's Life by Frank Sinatra.
I like players having fun, but you take football, your team is losing by 3 touchdowns, and the defensive unit intercepts a pass, and all like posing for a picture, going through their gimmick. I don't mind you're up 3 touchdowns. You're having fun, enthusiasm, but it's got to be done at the right time. You get the feeling the players practice this nonsense.
Here he goes. He says this is where it started. Elvis Presley was the one.
Hey, Pickles, I didn't know if you were here today.
Yes.
He shows his face there and tells us that Elvis was the start of it all.
Of course.
So with the walking up music.
I didn't know that.
I don't know that either. I can't say that that's true. But we're gonna go with Pickles there. He could be our correspondent on the the history of walk-up music.
Yeah,
let's know what I like.
Tennessee guy, so he's in Tennessee.
What I like about being on the show with you guys, I learn more about football all the time with you guys, even though you guys would never admit, maybe you learn a little bit listening to me. You guys would never admit that, but I do learn from you. But let me ask Jim and Matt, Matt could chime in on this to a question. With all the talk with the Cleveland Browns about Deshaun Watson's suspension, they've lost 2 centers for the season.
Yes.
They lost their starter and their backup. How much is that going to affect Jacoby Brissett? How much does the center affect the quarterback, going forward?
That's a good question. I think it affects him tremendously because you got to really work on that timing between quarterback and center. But also, we're in a different era where the quarterback was under center a lot more than he is now. So there's more like a shotgun snap. So I think that takes away some of, but if you're in a short yard situation, getting used to that snap. You just can't have any hands between your legs.
That's the truth.
That's exactly what she said.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and going to that, it's obviously the only time we really see, I for the most part, we only really see somebody under center anymore. Maybe 10% of the time.
Yeah, and it's
a
usually
lot
a
of the
3rd
time,
yardage
and
situation.
half of that time is for victory formation.
Yes.
I'm going to tell you something, guys, from going back when the quarterback was virtually always on the center, going back to football in the day when I used to appreciate it. The running game was more effective because the runners had a certain amount of momentum going forward. Now it's the quarterback gets it in the shotgun and he's basically handing it off to the run on his side or whatever.
But they have what they call pistol formations too, Jack, where the back is lined up behind the quarterback. So you do have some similarities in that.
But you don't get the same kind of momentum going forward, I feel, that the runners had before.
And if you look at that, Pags has mentioned this before, is when you don't have the fullback in the games as many times, that helped the momentum because you had that lead blocker. And Pags has mentioned that the fullback is, and a lot of teams have become extinct.
I mean, if you look at the wishbone formation, the single T, all those formations, it was faking guys. My coach told me that a fake was good as a block because it makes the defensive defenders stop for that 1 second. And if you got a guy that can really fake the ball to the running backs and stop that linebacker, that safety in his tracks,
freeze somebody.
It's as good as a block. So
yes,
I think that a lot of things have been forgotten when it comes to basic offense and defense, Jim. You know what I'm talking about. Down and distance, yards, time left at the end of the half, time left at the end of the game, when you know what the team basically is going to do. So, this is very simple stuff that anybody should know that teaches football.
Yeah, but you've mentioned this before. Football is very cyclical, and you're seeing some things that are like what's happening with Philly. Philly might have the largest line in the NFL.
Yes.
We've talked about that before, but that's going to be effective in their running game because the linebackers are getting smaller, and they won't be able to take on that guard or tackles that are coming out there to hit them because they're not used to taking on blocks. They're used to going around blocks.
Especially on the Eagles, because those guys, although they're monstrously big, they are able to pull. And because that's how they choose their guys. They like big guys that are mobile. That was the biggest deal with Jordan Mailata. That Jordan Mailata is able to go ahead and run. And if he's in that second tier that he's coming after you, you better watch out because ultimately he's going to run over you just like he did back when he was playing rugby. So there's a lot of that's happening. And, it's interesting because as I pay attention to the fullback is gone, but to compensate that, they bring the tight end in motion and they put him usually in the offset spot, and then he becomes in essence a fullback on that play.
No question.
So it's not like the fullback position went away. They just mask it with different players on the field rather than a fullback.
And Parcells was magnificent with pulling that tight end and kicking out the end or linebacker to open a hole for Curtis Martin and those other great running backs they had. And I mean, it's almost impossible to stop because you got the defense flowing somewhat the opposite way with the play, and they're countering back against them. So it's a very effective play. And as I said, he has some great running back that guys.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, interestingly enough, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Andy Reid's go-to play, still his go-to play, towards the end of a game, if he's got the lead and he's just trying to run out the clock, is the fake end around running back up the middle. It was the one play that I still remember it saying in overtime, fake end around, Deuce Staley up the middle. He used to do it all the time, would do it for, literally drives at a time. Fake end around, Deuce Staley up the middle. And you couldn't stop it because it was just, you had to make sure that the end around still had its thing. And then, of course, it also led to a naked bootleg if they decided to run that out as well. So,
ask Jim about that reverse trade with the Redskins. I mean,
yes.
You had Bob Grimm and all those guys coming and pulling against you.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was virtually unstoppable.
Yeah, it was for a long time. And then you had Riggins. Jesus.
Yeah, so it's – I mean, like I said, so that you're right. It is cyclical, and the more things change, the more they stay the same. It's obviously this is much more of a passing league right now rather than it is a running league, and that's why I feel like when a team is able to run the ball really well, they are very successful because defenses don't know how to really combat that as much anymore.
And Robert was talking about that, but that's Tennessee. The reason they stay there, and really Baltimore, they can. Even with the injuries, and they utilized Lamar Jackson too much. But if they get a running game, they're dangerous because that's their philosophy.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah, and that's where I feel that, a wishbone, going back to an old formation with Lamar Jackson would probably be very effective. Like where or doing these old options, the double option or triple options.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because ultimately you have that speed. If you had somebody who was just as fast as Lamar Jackson on the outside of them, you know what I mean? So that you could kind of play that rugby style play, because that's really what it comes down from, that to be able to get to the outside and then use those guys to tune in and block, the defense from getting to that runner.
It sounds like we're in a coaches meeting right now. Let's talk about let's talk about the quarterback situation in the NFL. We sound like a backroom game.
But Jack, that's the only way we can keep you quiet. We're in a quarterback meeting.
I didn't want to be exposed with my lack of knowledge on that. I was kind of waiting for the topic to get changed. But there was a little news that might seem obscure coming out of the Carolina Panthers camp, quarterback-wise, and not the Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold so-called competition, even though we know Baker's going to get the job. Matt Corral, the number 3 draft choice, he got injured. Now, he has 2 options, and this is what's interesting. You could have the surgery immediately or something and be out like 6.5 months, and not have the surgery at all and be out 11 months. Now, 6.5 months, does that get him back for the playoffs? But he's third string anyway. And what good would he do not having played all year long? Who should make that decision? Should it be the team? Should it be him? I mean, obviously he has to have a say, but that's kind of interesting, the 2 different options.
Well, first of all, the happiest guy in the room is P.J. Walker.
Yeah, good one.
He said, Matt, go ahead and have the surgery. Man, it's your future. And that is true. It is his future.
Well, that's the third string. That's the quarterback, P.J. Walker.
Yes.
But let me just say something. Matt Rule probably, even though he feels bad about the injury to Matt Corral, he probably has a little smile. And because P.J. Walker was his guy in college, and now he can keep him on the team.
Yeah. But he wasn't going to play that much this year.
No.
And that's where I think that you get the surgery. Get the surgery. Get yourself better. Start working out with the team. You want to come back for the practices, even if you're on the practice squad or whatever. Yeah. He's probably going to be on the PUP. You know what I mean? So, but he'll be able to, first off, you get to keep your paycheck. Secondly, you get to use the facilities and all those things, even though you're team. But you'll be able to use all of those facilities. And then you're that much more ahead for next season. If you're waiting 11 months, to get yourself right, hopefully that it only takes 11 months. But it happens if it takes 13 months. Now you've already started to affect next year.
But they wasted a third-round draft choice, the Panthers, and Matt Rule's job is in jeopardy. They don't have a good season.
But
I don't
Jack,
think he survives next year. Matt
Corral wasn't going to save Matt Rule's job.
No.
It's either going to be Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold.
No.
Don't you agree?
They drafted him before they got Baker Mayfield, so they thought maybe if Sam Darnold falters, Matt Corral could be another option if he develops when they got him. But as it turns out, they could have had a useful player, a decent player.
There's a possibility, but that's a big if. Right now, they have Matt Corral, and they got to get him healthy because he's probably going to have the opportunity to be their future. And I don't know when the future is going to be because both Donald will probably be gone if he doesn't win next year. But Mayfield is probably going to be their future as long as he's successful. And
Mayfield's going to start.
Yeah.
It's going to be Mayfield.
So Donald will probably be gone next year. They'll probably keep him there, and then Corral has an opportunity to get that second spot.
Now,
but speaking about that, here's an interesting thing when you're talking about quarterbacks. The owner of this 49ers, San Francisco 49ers, said they have no problem keeping Jimmy G. Do you think that's throwing some smoke screens?
Guys, it might tell you how Trey Lance is looking behind the scenes. We don't know what the coaching staff really thinks of him. We hear that Trey Lance is looking good, but what happens if he's not? What happens if they could sense he's struggling and they might think, look, when push comes to shove, Jimmy G will be ready at mid-season, and we know we could win with Jimmy G. At least he's adequate, okay? We don't know how good Trey Lance really is. He might be sensational. He might be a bust. We just don't know how it's going to turn out.
On the same note, the reason this all started, they said, is because when Jimmy G, I think he signed a contract for $135 million, he disappeared.
He was hanging out with Michael Irvin somewhere, I heard.
He disappeared.
Yeah. Did he disappear? I mean, it's
they said that he didn't come to offseason anything when he signed that new contract.
Got you. And that's their determination on why they want to get rid of him?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I could feel that. I mean, you just went to the NFC Championship game with this quarterback. You're trying to go figure out a new quarterback right now, and you're going to give him 6 weeks to figure it out. But you can only give him 6 weeks. That means that hook is really in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Or 2-4 at the end of that 6.
Cut all those guys.
Oh, they'd be all gone. I know I fool around with those idiots, a bunch of prima donnas. Listen, you're there to play football. You're there to make a living. You're there to take care of your family.
I agree.
And of course, be part of the fandom and everything there. Stop being a baby. Play the game the way it's meant to be played, and take your knocks. I mean, that's life, guys. I mean, we all have hard times, and we all got to do what we got to do. But if you're going to sit back and you're going to cry because they're not going to give you enough money, or because your agent's not getting along with the coach, then he just should be gone. There's no reason to keep him around.
But don't you think, Mac, this is in every sport right now?
Yes.
Yes,
I do.
Listen to this one. I was reading an article about Kyrie Irving, and they said the reason he's mad at the Nets is because he wanted a clause in his contract that he could play no more than 70 games a year. What kind of junk is that? That is bizarre.
He's not a basketball player. He's just a guy out there, fooling around. He's not a.
And the only team he wants to go to is the 76ers.
Yeah. I just can't wait for that.
I mean, coaches are like that in general these days, too. They'll put up with a guy depending on how good he is. They're great disciplinarians with the borderline players. Those are the guys and they can act tough. Your boy, Jimmy Johnson, the perfect example. He cut a guy for falling asleep at a meeting, but admitted if it were Troy Aikman, he'd say, "Wake up, Troy."
He already said it. Just tell him to go get coffee.
Yeah.
I agree with him because if I got a superstar player, I'm gonna treat it
you have
different than the
cut
last
Jim
guy
if
on the
you were-
roster.
Would Jimmy have cut you if you were on a borderline play? What would he have done if you were dozing off?
He would have told me that I wouldn't doze off, first of all, but like Max said, this is my job, but he would have told me go get coffee.
Yeah.
He had
You hope.
Jimmy
You
was
hope.
on-
You didn't want him to send you on your way.
Yeah.
Well,
But-
you know, could you imagine a coach's list for fun? The guys who can afford to doze off and the guys who can't, and post that list of the players. The players would get a big laugh out of it. They want to make.
I don't think they
the
would
list
do
of the
that.
Guys who can afford to doze off. That would get a little bit of humor. That's what I would do if I were the coach. The players would be cracking up. Who could afford to doze off?
Jack,
at the meeting in
you were a
camp?
teacher and you did coach, and you
Yeah.
never did that.
No.
So, but this
I
goes
gotta
back
show you
to a
the
little
articles written about me in the school paper. You would have cracked up laughing. They quote one player who says, "Mr. Hirsch is a joke. He talks a good game but never backs it up." The reporter didn't see. I suspended that player when he was interviewing him. He was on suspension.
Wow.
But they don't. But I got a kick out of it.
But just to go back a little bit about what Mac was saying, that the problem is that they've taken away the mandatories.
Yes.
So now that the moment that you make it voluntary, well, I don't have to show up.
Yeah.
You just because you want me to doesn't mean I have
agree.
to.
I agree.
And that's
this
the
is a
problem.
different-
And that's the mentality.
Yeah. And there's
Right.
a lot of different type of players today. It's a more of a me instead of team. And we talked about this. How do I get out there? How do I get me out there? It's not about the team. And that's just the way the sports are. And it's not just football. It's every sport. You see it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the way, unfortunately, it is. The sports are going that direction. Championships, Jack was talking about championships don't mean as much to him. It's how much I can get paid. How many clicks do I get on my social media page? Let's be honest.
What am I doing for my brand?
Exactly.
So everybody's a brand.
Guys, this is my theory. I wonder, is it more about winning a championship or winning the ring? We hear the ring so they could show it off on their finger like fancy jewelry. Look what I got. I got the ring. I mean, the ring is secondary to being a champion. I don't need a ring. I don't need a gold medal if I won the Olympics. I mean, it's nice to have to validate to look at once in a while, but it's just knowing what you did, that you were a champion.
But here's the thing you also got to remember. When we were young, teams had players that were there for an extended period of time.
Yes.
And Giants, Philadelphia, Jets, they had these players who were there, the Cowboys, and you knew your players. Now it's so transient because of the money that, let's look at it right now. Von Miller starts off in Denver, gets traded to the Rams. Now he's in Buffalo. Khalil Mack, Chicago, went to Buffalo, comes to Buffalo, where did Khalil?
Oakland. Wasn't he started in Oakland and then went to Chicago and now he's in San Diego or LA?
Yeah, now he's in LA Chargers. So it's so transient. And even in quarterbacks, because in the old times, could you imagine Tom Brady playing for anywhere else but New England?
That's changed a lot.
Yeah, and that's changed.
Speaking of quarterbacks and speaking of discipline, Mike Tomlin, he's one of those rare coaches. You get the feeling he has complete control over the team. Case in point, Ben Roethlisberger could have been a dominant personality with the Steelers. Could have basically been running the organization in a sense. That's how much weight he had. Mike Tomlin kept Ben under control. We knew Mike Tomlin was the boss and not Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah.
Right, and now he's got three quarterbacks there. I'm intrigued by the quarterback battles in the NFL. Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, their number one draft choice, and the old holdover Mason Rudolph. And I get the feeling, Mitch Trubisky went to the Steelers with an understanding he's probably going to be starting because he had other opportunities to go elsewhere, Mitch Trubisky. The Giants really wanted him. he would have started the Giants as the backup, but as soon as Daniel Jones would have faltered, Mitch Trubisky would have started because he would have been reunited with his old offensive coordinator at Buffalo, Brian Daboll. It would have been a perfect fit for Mitch Trubisky in that sense. But now he's with the Steelers, but I hear Kenny Pickett is really looking good and
I've heard that too.
You know, so I get the feeling Mike Tomlin is an honorable guy. So as long as Mitch Trubisky is close to Kenny Pickett, he's going to keep his word.
But here's the problem you run to, and I'm sure Mac and Pags would agree with me. This is we talk about preseason. A lot of teams simplify their defenses. Once you get into the season, it becomes more complex. And I don't know if Pickett's ready for that at such a young age. We've seen quarterbacks last year that were pretty darn good struggle picking up more complex defenses.
There's a difference, Jim. Kenny Pickett played 4 years.
I don't think it makes a difference.
If you played longer in college, there's more seasoning. Guys are coming out early in this
Yeah,
year.
It's still a different level, Jack. I mean,
Yes.
I don't care whether you played 10 years there or not. You're still going up into a game that's a lot faster and a lot more technical.
Yeah.
You can't. That adjustment's not going to be easy for anybody.
Yeah, that's my opinion too.
And I think, I'll be honest, bigger reason on why Mitch Trubisky chose Pittsburgh over really going anywhere else is if I was a quarterback and I was, still somewhat touted and I had an option to go to, like a team that's in desperate need of a quarterback, I'm going to choose the one with the best defense because ultimately a great defense is going to make me look better just in general. Some of the mistakes that I make are going to get covered by a defense. And that's the one thing that I could say about Pittsburgh that's going to be a little bit of saving grace for their season this year is that their defense is going to really keep them in a lot of games that they probably shouldn't be in. And all Mitch has got to do is be able to be a great quarterback for like 10% of the game where he could be mediocre the rest of the game. And some of those mistakes that happen when he's mediocre are going to get swallowed up by the defense. Not all of them now, but some of them. And that's going to play a big part. At least if I was a quarterback, that would be in my mindset. I wouldn't want to go to the Jets because obviously they're used to giving up a lot of points. I wouldn't want to go to Seattle because, they're given odds on how, if they're going to be the worst team in the league. So those are the things that I think about. And obviously he was in Chicago where they thought they would have a good defense and led them to a playoffs. And of course was a field goal doink away from getting to the divisional round.
That's right.
Yeah, but what is the answer? Take a guy like Kyle Trask, the backup quarterback of the Buccaneers. Let's say Tom Brady should all of a sudden retire. Now, he was drafted high. People forget something like about number 30 overall, but he wasn't a threat to Brady in the slightest. He carried the clipboard for one season last year. Do you really think he learned from Brady spending any quality time with him? He basically was holding a clipboard, observing, knowing as long as Brady's with the Buccaneers, I'm not playing. And all of a sudden he's thrust in to be the guy if Brady suddenly retires, which might happen. You never know.
I don't think Brady's going to retire.
You can never tell for sure. Maybe this leave of absence is going to be more than that. He's going to decide, look, he spoke with Giselle. She's going to, enough's enough.
Brady's somewhere getting the stem cells, getting himself ready.
Is that what that is? I thought that, you know what? Just because I've met somebody, a friend of mine, who just had the stem cell treatments done. And ultimately, in how much he's been improved. So the moment he told me that and how much the cost was and where he had to go to do it, I was like, I wonder if that's what's happening right now.
I bet you that's what's happening because you got to remember he's 45 years old.
Now they don't test for that, right?
No, it's legal.
Yeah, so really whatever you want in that regard, as long as you're not taking steroids. And literally, the schedule that they're talking about, if he's doing it in those spots, that it would take about 16 days.
That's my
point.
And
it's almost perfect in line with, and where he would go is a nice area. They have this great resort. It's secluded. So you bring, it's Gazelle can bring her boyfriend too, and everybody's happy. So that
I think the hardest
I love throwing that out
when
there.
you get in football, when you get to be Brady's age, is taking the hits. There's a major difference between 25 and 45. You get knocked on your butt at 25, you bounce right up.
But you got to remember too, Jack.
I know walking my dog years ago, like when I fell and slipped on the ice. When I was young, I would bounce right up. I would lie there stunned.
But you also got to remember, Jack, other than Jan Stenerud, nobody's played this long.
Blanda?
It's Brady.
George Blanda was like 48.
Was he?
Yeah, Max.
They weren't quarterbacks. What, Blanda was a quarterback.
He was a quarterback / field goal kicker.
Yeah.
So,
because I was thinking Morton Anderson. Morton Anderson played till he was 50.
George Blanda had a Tim Tebow type run when he was when he was 47 that made national news.
And he pulled a hamstring.
No one pulled hamstrings in those days. They were real athletes.
That's where men were men.
They were real men at those. Let me tell you something, Jim. You think you played with tough players. Oh, these guys are real tough. You never played with a guy nearly as, and Pags vouch for me, you never played with a guy nearly as tough as Chuck Bednarik. You wouldn't want to take Chuck Bednarik on, Jim. Right, Pags?
Ernie Stautner, who was my D-line coach when I originally came to the Cowboys, and for many years, said that Bednarik was as tough as they come. And I have
there you go.
Ernie Stautner, because he played with broken arms, his knees would lock up in practice, and he wouldn't get a shot or anything. He'd go play. So
all these guys were scared to tackle the great Jim Brown. Bednarik relished the opportunity. He loved it, and Brown knew it. Brown knew he had the ultimate respect for Chuck Bednarik.
Everybody has respect for Bednarik.
Yeah.
You would have probably started crying if you saw Bednarik.
And he was smart. Oh, yeah, I would have.
He wouldn't even get on the field, Jim.
He would have came down the way. I'm a boxing guy.
Let me tell you the story. No one talks about the pre-Super Bowl teams. Pags, so it's going to like this and knows about it. 1960 championship game. Packers are marching down the field. Their last pass is on something like the Eagle 15-yard line, but they have no timeouts left. The seconds are ticking away. Bednarik is lying on top of the ball carrier, and he won't get up. And then the game ends. He says, "You can now get up, you blankety blank blank. This blankety game is over." You know?
Hey, to speak of that is that when they put the greatest of all time, they had Bednarik as linebacker, but they also had him as a center. I didn't know he played center.
Yeah, two-way player.
He was behind Mike Webster.
Didn't he play in the championship game, offense and defense?
Yeah.
He never
played 57 minutes in that game. 57 minutes. And really, they had him listed as a linebacker, but really, he was a nose guard.
Yeah.
So he would be in the standing position, which is why they called him a middle linebacker. He didn't like to get down in a 3-point stance or a 4-point stance against the center because he felt that it was harder to get up, to get on guys when you hike the ball and go that way. So he knew that if guys were going up against him standing up, that he had a harder time. So that's what he would do against the other centers.
One of the hardest blocks in football is an open field block downfield.
Yeah.
I mean, you're trying to hit a moving target who's either quicker or maybe smaller than you. And you've got to, you can't go full speed because you're going to miss the guy. You got to kind of be under control, but then the guy can get around you. So, if you can get a couple guards or tackles or whatever that can pull, that's one of the most valuable things in the NFL.
Oh, no question. Yeah. Especially a center, because Dwight Stevenson, the great Dwight Stevenson from the Dolphins, it was incredible to watch him pull.
How come Jim, this was before you played. How come those Vince Lombardi teams that ran the power sweep, no one could stop that? It's like you knew what was coming. In this day and age, if a team tried that, they couldn't just overpower you with a power sweep.
Some teams, but it's all about fitting it properly. And that's what the issue is if you don't fit it properly and you have the right type of running backs, they're going to make some yardage on it. And it's just like with the Washington Redskins. And nobody knew how to fit, just like he said, the weak side runs with the guards and the tackle and the guard and the tackle pulling from the strong side. And then the same thing when they ran the strong side. Nobody had an answer to it. It's just like the Giants with the 3-4, how they ran it with Lawrence Taylor and Carl Banks. Everybody has to adjust to what they're doing.
Do you subscribe to the theory, guys, Mac? I never asked you this. LT, the greatest defensive player ever, what?
I'd say he's at the top. I mean, it's hard to call anybody the greatest at anything. I mean, listen, LT was a special player. He had speed, he had power, he could run down receivers, running backs, throw quarterbacks down with one hand. He was an unbelievable athlete. But there's a lot of unbelievable athletes on the football field. And when you match up against anybody, and Jim knows this when he matched up against some offensive tackles that are just plain out nasty, it's a hard position to be into. I mean, I don't think Taylor was more of an athlete than Carson. Carson was a defensive end who had 10 sacks.
And South Carolina State.
Yeah, and I mean, Banks Reasons was a big run stopper in the middle of there. I mean, some of the hits he made were amazing. So, I mean, it's hard to compare, as we all know, different generations, eras of players to other players. It's a different game, different situation, different environment, and I mean, listen.
Belichick says he's the best, though. Bill Belichick, who coached them.
Bill Belichick is one of the best head coaches, so I take what he says very seriously.
Yeah, but some athletes transcend. There today, there are some athletes that would have been better. Obviously, they would have been great 40 years ago, but they would have been great today. Prime example is Lawrence Taylor would have been a heck of a player today. Reggie White, Bruce Smith. I mean, they transcend things. Wide receivers. Some of those wide receivers, we don't like them, but T.O. still would have been good. Randy Moss, because they had unique skills. Jerry Rice.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, though. So, and for instance, LT, you're talking about all the other guys that were on that defense, and then you mentioned Reggie White in that same breath, and Bruce Smith in that same breath. They all had great guys on the defense with them.
Exactly right.
That would they have been as great had they not had those guys playing with them? And that's a more difficult question to answer. Aaron Donald, as great of a player as he is, wasn't able to get to that point, without Von Miller next to him to be able to do that. Once he got Von Miller, you could say
Von Miller got there. No, he was great before.
There's no denying that. There's no denying that. But it wasn't until he had Von Miller that he was able to kind of get over that hump. That Von Miller, the catalyst to propel them over into a championship. That Lawrence Taylor's type of same situation. They had the guys on the defensive line to do that, but it wasn't like that they were perennial. He was like this force and this beast that you had to go away from. You couldn't go his way.
Let me ask you this. Those great players that we've mentioned, don't you think they elevated everybody else because they took most of the attention? Don't you agree?
Absolutely. But how much is it? The scales have to balance some, yes, they elevate everybody else's play, but they also, because they're doing that and they're taking that attention, now the other people are doing it. So you have to start to pay attention to everybody else. And because of that, you have to do that. I feel that, and Reggie White was, like I said, when I think of the top three best defensive players of all time, you're right. I think of LT and I think of Reggie White in that same sentence. That the third one is more arguable than anything else, but those two are always in the conversation. And that, think about, like, if they didn't have Jerome Brown right next to him for a long time, would that have been, would it have been much harder for Reggie White to do the things that he did, having another Mike Golick instead of a Jerome Brown?
I think Reggie, it wouldn't have mattered with Reggie because Reggie was, he was.
I'm going to tell you what's interesting too. A guy could be a great player like LT, but not necessarily be a great leader, because he doesn't have to be, because LT had guys like Harry Carson, who was more of an actual leader than LT on that defense. Reggie White was actually more of a leader than LT, even though you could say LT was maybe marginally better, as a player.
Better spoken, and that's the one thing that I've learned about a lot of, and maybe Jim, you could speak more to this, that some of the leaders are actually, a good amount of the leaders, more than you would think, that once they leave football, become preachers and teachers beyond, because they are so well spoken and they are able to motivate and inspire everybody else around them. So that they're, obviously Reggie White was a preacher. The biggest thing that was known when the Eagles won the Super Bowl was that Nick Foles was baptizing guys every week.
Remember that. I do remember.
We're baptizing guys every week, and I don't care how you get everybody on the same page, but literally, whether it's Jesus, whether it's God, whether it's Meek Mill playing, everybody likes that same song, and we're all going to band together because we love Meek Mill. I don't care how you get everybody on that same page. Once you have everybody on that same page and you got somebody leading them the proper way, you can move a mountain much faster than if you're pulling by yourself.
Yeah,
and
but I also understand this too, especially about football, is some players walk in and they have a presence. You don't know what it is. They have an aura about them. When they walk into a room, they demand the respect and they get the respect. And that's, certain players are like that. When they walk in, you're like, and you just know they're the guy. Reggie White was like that. LT was like that. Bruce, they get that respect. And then, Jim Kelly was a perfect example of that. He's a Hall of Famer, but when he walked in the room, there was something about him and he took control of it.
Well, most recently, Joe Burrows.
Yes.
Joe Burrows is that guy.
Yeah, you're right.
That's the one thing that you heard about everybody in Cincinnati, was that he immediately took over the room the moment that he walked in there.
That's
he didn't have to say a word.
And Mahomes to a certain extent. And that's what the scary thing about the NFC East is, Jalen Hurts, because he is starting to do that.
Yep.
And that makes him dangerous. There's something about him, and that's when players start to gravitate to you, they will do things that are extraordinary.
And I feel that in sports that happens a tremendous amount more frequently. You've probably seen that a lot more frequently because of the egos and the confidence levels of some of these people. When you're not in sports on that type of level, on the professional level, it's rare that you run into somebody like that. It's usually a very attractive woman comes in and the record player stops and everybody turns to look. I'll tell you the one person that I know that, like I said, when you got to meet him, I wasn't sure. I kept looking because I was younger then. When Wilt Chamberlain walked into a room, it was amazing how everybody. It didn't matter how, like, he was just passing through a room, and it was almost like he had a glow about him, that it was saying, angelic. Like you almost hear like the horns announcing him before he even walks in the room. He walks in the room and then walks out of the room, and it's like, what just occurred? it was an amazing thing to witness firsthand.
Guys, we talked about how, the difference basics in offense are downs and distance and changing the snap count. But also on defense, you have 3 different levels, right? You got the defensive line, the linebackers, and the secondary. And they're all reading off each other and off the offense. So, for instance, a guy goes up and calls an audible to the right side or something. The defense figures it out, and they all say they roll the coverage to that side of the field. You as a coach are hoping everything that you taught them at that point is going to be successful because it's one and done. I mean, if they score there, the game could be possibly over. So you're really hoping that all the work that you put in during the preseason, which is very important, even though people don't think it is, and all the work that you put in during camp comes into play then. You hope that your team can work in harmony at that point. And I'm not talking about singing. You got to make sure that they're ready to go at that one play, because if that play does work or in another case doesn't work, the game's over. Mm-hmm. So, people got to understand that from the time the kid starts midget football or peewee football, goes all the way through the high school programs, the college programs, all the way into high school, into pros. He's being taught something. He's learning something not only about football, but about life, what it's like to get knocked down and get back up again. So, I mean, listen, people out there, and I'm not trying to say they're ignorant or anything, but the parents on the sidelines, the people yelling at the umpires and all that stuff, they don't understand what it takes to get this going in the right direction.
Yes. Yeah. They think they do, but they don't. I agree.
Yeah. So
it's not something that can be taught. That's the hard part about some of this. You could learn some of the morals that go along with it and some of the specifics of the rights and the wrongs, but you can't teach the confidence. You can't teach the, as Pickles says here, charisma that somebody's going to have. Yes. That's not a taught. That's inherent. You either have it or you do not. And that's the hard part about this. It's like, it's like I'm going to use myself as this example here. When I'm painted up, I obviously have a much louder microphone than I do normally. And that's because the paint kind of transcends that. However, there are lots of times when I can walk into a room, judge the room, and take it over just because I know how to do that well enough. That's not something that I ever learned. I was something that I'm able to do just because I pay attention enough to people in general. You can't teach that. Or if you can teach it, it's a very hard skill to learn.
Well, some players and some people, they, as life experiences, they learn it. And that's what makes them do that. Some players may have not started, or people, but in the end, they learn those skills to help them develop it. You can't teach it, but they can develop it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Right. Right. And make it a little bit better. And then, of course, it becomes not only that your coaches and the players around you, because it only takes one to start to peck at it that can bring it all apart. Turn it all apart, at least for everybody else.
Yeah, it's like
I mean, you get out there, you're the first 2 people, nobody's dancing. You get out there, you start dancing, and all of a sudden, they're all out there dancing with you. So it's I don't know, it's crazy, guys.
Yeah, so it's one of those things that I feel is, it's easy to have, or it's not easy to have that skill, but if you have it, it does transcend to a lot of different things. I mean, I think of Kirk Gibson the same way. He went in there and they were playing jokes on him at the very first couple of days of training camp for the Dodgers. And he's like, this is why you guys don't win. This is the problem. I came here to play. I didn't come here to have these jokes. And everybody's mentality changed in that instant.
Yeah,
that's somebody who commands the respect and took over the room.
Exactly.
And because of that, they followed him to a championship.
Yeah.
So and that's
players like that.
Exactly. Well, I tell you, these 2 hours go fast, especially when we have these.
But
great
the wonderful thing is having Mac back.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that again.
So
now my job's in jeopardy, on the Northeast Streaming Network. But Mac's going to be making some cuts, and Mac is old school. He doesn't care what you've done for him in the past.
He's going to have a golf off, I hear.
Winning now.
The worst golfer, worst golfer gets.
I would never get rid of you, Jack. You're like a father to me.
There you go. Well, everybody, thank you very much for joining us this weekend, and we'll see you next week here at the Mac.